envision 3 female attorneys coming together to have our voices heard. Each of us would have different opinions, different passions, different backgrounds, and different views. Although we are different and unique, we are able to come together to discuss our experiences, navigating through the legal profession and this thing called life. Now, the vision has come alive, and we invite you each and every week to listen to us as we talk about what's trending in the news and our legal insight, tackle real-life issues that affect not only us as attorneys, but us as women of color. Disclaimer. This podcast is intended to provide entertainment and general information. The information provided and the views given are not intended to constitute legal advice and should not be relied upon as legal representation. All views expressed on this podcast are our own and do not represent the opinions of any entity whatsoever we are affiliated with now or will be affiliated with in the future. Hey guys, it's your girl Brandy. We over here jamming to the good old school days, Spike Lee school days. To my left, I have my girls with me. To my left and to my right, and we also have a special guest. But we're gonna go ahead and introduce ourselves again. To my left.
Hi guys, the one that has the common sense, Taria. How are you guys doing today? Hello.
So much shade. To my right,
your fan favorite, Samantha. Sam will be here all week, guys.
Are those real glasses?
Yes. Oh. Why would I have fake glasses?
That's the thing.
Oh, only people who wear fake glasses are people who don't have to wear real ones.
I have to wear real ones. But anyway, we have a special guest today. We're actually talking about hair love when the natural hair and the corporate world collide. We know that's been a big topic in the news, in media right now. You know, Hair Love, which is a 7-minute film on natural hair, won an Oscar just recently. And we know the young man out of Houston, the suburb of Houston, was unable to graduate because he refused to cut his locks.
Well, he was unable to walk.
Oh, yes. He was unable to walk. He did graduate, but he was unable to walk. But now we have a guest here with us, and I'm going to have him introduce himself because he has dreads and probably has experienced some things in corporate America with his hair. But go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Good evening. My name is Sharnce Brown.
Is that your real voice?
That is my real voice.
Not that old Barry White.
Right.
Woo, woo, woo.
And after the podcast, we'll be playing some slow jams on Night Evening Purple Rain.
Purple Rain. Purple Rain. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Welcome to our show.
I'm glad to be here.
Just tell me a little bit about yourself.
All right. Speaking of Purple Rain, I do rain from South Dallas, Texas.
Ow, D-Town.
That's my zoo. Not mine.
No, that's OBO Cliff.
Oh, okay.
From
There's
South
a
Dallas.
difference.
There's a difference.
Clearly, I'm not from those places.
Yeah, clearly. But I am from South Dallas, Texas, by way of Skyline High and the University of Texas.
Boo.
The University of Texas.
I've never heard it called that before.
University of, like, the Longhorns?
Hookham.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well.
I've never heard of those people. Okay.
Oh, but you have heard of Longhorns, obviously, correct?
Yeah.
We heard of y'all losing.
Cows.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You went to UT. Moving on. Come on, Brandy.
LSU.
LSU?
Yes, the reigning national champions.
Oh, yeah. I meant to tell you congratulations on that situation.
Thank you.
And thank you for your coach.
15-0. 15-0.
Although we do have a winning record against LSU.
Not this year.
Excuse me.
All
I
time.
need y'all to get back on task.
Hey,
that's
Taria.
another episode. That's another episode.
But
Delusions.
Taria,
Huh?
I do want to
facts.
thank you for your coach that you politely handed over to us. We're looking forward to a great season with your offensive coordinator.
Another episode. We need to stay on task. We got a lot to talk about.
Can we bring an episode about all the haters
I'm not hating.
15-0?
No, I'm not hating. I was rooting for LSU, and I'm glad
appreciate
that Baylor now
But
has
whenever you
taken
want that
y'all
episode, I'm ready for it.
Okay.
He didn't
Back to
even finish
hair
his
love.
introduction. Like, y'all didn't cut him off with the
He was throwing up gang
UT.
signs and stuff. I didn't know what that stuff meant.
Okay.
Those gang signs.
Let's start back with you went to the University of Texas.
Don't throw the gang signs.
Okay, so let me start with this. So, do you work in corporate America?
Yes.
Can you tell us, what do you do?
Actually, I work in title.
Okay, so you have you always worked in title?
No, I haven't always worked in title. Previously, before working in title, part owner in a marketing company, Alpha Recovery Marketing, which we did marketing for substance abuse treatment centers in California, Florida, and also Texas, Florida, and California.
I was gonna say,
Right.
you did marketing in California and also California.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
at UT.
No, that's at Dallas.
Oh, wait a minute. Woo, now you talking about Dallas? That hits, that
I know,
hit deep.
it
That
hits home.
it.
Back to hair
Them
love,
fight
guys.
words, them
Good
curse
and bad
words.
hair. See if I care. Good and bad hair.
So yes, back to hair love. So we are having this conversation. We do want to be a part of this conversation, and we want to talk about it and be informed, educate, and also, just have an open dialogue on why hair love is important. So that's why we're talking about hair love. And also, too, you notice that among African Americans have been discriminated a lot because of their hair, because they're natural, or because of the color, or because, they have dreads and things like that. I personally, I have a haircut, so I'm not natural. So I just want to put that out there. I have a haircut. I will quickly go back and put a relaxer on my head in a minute when I feel like I want to rock a cute little pixie cut. And I love my pixies. Anybody that know me.
But the way your hair is set up right now,
But
do
right-
you have a relaxer,
I do not have a relaxer, so my hair is not straight.
so it is.
I mean,
natural?
it's natural.
We get
So
it.
I'm not part of the natural hair
Right.
movement. Let me say that. I
Yeah.
am not part of the natural hair
You're
movement.
not those aggressive,
Yeah.
the aggressive natural
Aggressive,
people.
ready to fight,
Right.
like hold it down. No, because I will
chemicals,
creamy
crack.
I will run and get that creamy crack back on my
Right.
head. So I'm sorry if I disappointed anybody, but I'm not a part of the movement. Why this is important is because for so long, African American women especially have been told that natural is not pretty. And because I know, like, growing up, I just been told that natural hair was not pretty. And growing up, people would get teased for their kinks or for their coils, for their curliness. So it was like looked upon, it was better to have straight hair than have nappy hair. So that's kind of how,
Nappy hair.
I think
nappy in a good term, not, but you're looking at me crazy. So you got to get it off you.
How are we defining nappy hair?
Well, tell me, how do you find nappy hair?
Nappy hair. I think nappy hair is not a word that derived from the black community. That's a word that was given to us by Anglo-Saxons, and a word that we have adopted in our community in a very negative manner that has placed many negative connotations on ourselves and how we view ourselves, which it's, to me, is still a form of psychological slavery. And, as we talk about ourselves, when we call our hair nappy or call someone else's hair nappy, it's just telling ourselves you're not good enough to not love yourself, or that I don't love you because of the way that you look, because you don't look European.
Okay, I have a
That's what I
question
hear.
because we were slaves, so every word that we learned was from Anglo-Saxons. Every single
Each
word, each word that we learned, even the ones they didn't want us to learn. So you're saying that saying nappy is derogatory?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Nappy is a derogatory word. Now, like some things we have taken from Anglo-Saxon, European, slave
Right.
masters, whatever you want to call them, colonizers, Wakanda forever.
Yeah.
We've taken those words and we've turned those words in, as they say, turn a negative to a positive. And, we can use nappy as a term of endurement. But as my sister here was saying, good hair, nappy hair, perm hair versus nappy hair, as if it is a bad thing to have hair that is coarse or considered coarse, that doesn't grow straight and stringy out of your head.
So what I was, let me clarify. So when I was referring to that, so yeah, back in like the 80s or whatever, even, nappy was a bad thing. That word was a bad thing. Now in 2020, nappy is not a bad thing because we do say, oh, I like my nappy hair. I think it's
happy
in the
'cause I'm nappy.
song. Yeah.
Right.
So when I say nappy, yes, and growing up, having nappy hair was shunned upon. And that was bad. Like, girls would be like, ooh, your hair nappy. Ooh, your hair, that was a bad thing growing up in like the 80s and the 90s. So.
But sometimes people hair still be nappy. I said it.
Well, I think I grew up in the 80s myself. I, definitely grew up in the 80s myself, and there were so many things that we didn't know about ourselves.
Right.
Still to this day, thank God you have things like the internet and these fancy things called books that every once in a while we'll open up and feed our minds and feed our brains. As pertains to our culture, there's just so many things that we don't know. As Samantha stated here earlier, everything that we learned, every word that we learned, were not our own. And so when we learned about our hair, the things that we learned about our hair, learned about our skin color, those are not things of our own. I distinctly remember watching Tarzan growing up. Only thing I knew about Africa were two things. Seeing people in mini grass skirts with a bone in their nose and seeing hungry kids with flies on their nose. That's all I knew about Africa. And one of the meanest jokes you can say to a kid is, your mother's an African booty scratcher or something.
We had
that conversation.
We had a conversation about that.
But you know what? One thing I did watch Mixed-ish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I watched Mixed-ish, he does these kind of life lessons like about African American culture. And he made me realize something that I really didn't recognize is that part of the reason why straightening your hair became such a big deal for African American culture, especially for women, is because in the 70s, in the 60s, black women actually started to take on jobs in corporate America that normally African American women and men were not given or hired for. So when we started working in office settings, we wanted to groom our hair to make us seem more acceptable, and slowly that transition to professional, right? So he kind of goes through this progression, which now we're kind of learning that, it's not about how you really wear your hair, even though I have some opinions about that. But it's not unprofessional if you want to rock braids or wear your natural hair or wear a moderately sized afro, emphasis on moderately sized, in corporate America.
Well, I would somewhat disagree with you from saying that started in the 70s. That started far beyond the 70s. Madam C.J. Walker, when she decided, when she made she's often credited with inventing the perm and, the hot comb. So we started to assimilate many decades prior to the 70s. And that was done because of the stigma of self-hate that was placed upon us.
Right, but I'm saying the difference was when we started to associate, one was for assimilation when they started to straighten their hair. But what I'm saying, when we started getting the idea of what is professional, what is unprofessional in corporate America, that's when we started being introduced to corporate jobs.
Well, if you think back to that, going into the 70s, you're coming out of the 60s, you're coming out of the civil rights movement.
I said 60s and 70s.
But a big part of that movement was Black Power.
Right.
And what was associated with Black Power was a mighty and a strong afro. And so the power and the strength of the afro represents the power and the strength of the black man and the black woman, because you were natural and you were black. And it represents strength even to this day. If people see a group of black males with dreads, they're looked at as a gang.
Oh, I look at them as they from either Florida or Louisiana.
Florida, Louisiana. Obviously, you haven't traveled very much to the East Coast.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, when I see a group of guys and they have dreadlocks, I say, "Where are you from?" They say Florida or Louisiana.
Because you're in Houston.
Exactly.
That's regional.
Exactly.
Because I was like, a lot up north, they have men wear dreads a lot up north, and women.
Yeah, actually, I was first introduced to dreads in New York.
How long have you been growing your dreads, by the way?
I've been growing my locks for about 20 years.
I've seen when I went to Philadelphia, it was so many women rocking dreadlocks.
Yes.
Like so many women.
Yeah, and that's what I love about Philadelphia. Philadelphia, and it's often mistaken with the South, and you get to the Midwest and the East Coast. Philadelphia, Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit. That's where many blacks migrated from the South to those areas for industrial jobs, not the corporate jobs as you spoke of, for industrial jobs. And there's still a very Southern culture there in those cities. Philadelphia, being natural, you think of the neo soul. You see the look. You see things that somewhat resemble somewhat of even the '60s, because there's still the black love, black power, and self-empowerment as black people. And being in Texas, here in the South, those things are taboo, and those things are taboo to us in our own community. And I think even now in 2020, I think we're now starting to move forward into realizing our own strength and saying, you know what, look in the mirror and saying, I'm okay with how God made me.
Okay.
Taria? She's shifting, y'all know.
Right.
So I'm natural, and I just go and have someone blow out my hair. There's a theory out there that because I get my hair straightened, I may not have self-love because I'm not leaving my hair in the same natural state. What say you?
I would disagree with that from the aspect of that's the gift about being black. You know, we don't look the same. We're a box of chocolate. We don't look the same. Our skin tones are different. Our eyes are different. Our hair color, our hair texture is different. I was a redhead growing up, believe it or not. My son, he's the same way now, even his locks. He had red waves, and now he has red locks, and it's natural. This thing about, and it's the beauty of black women, actually, are the different ways that they can present themselves with their hair. I think it's a gift, and that's why there's many things that black women have, and that's why you see so many people of European ancestry who are paying thousands and hundreds and millions of dollars to look like us in so many different ways. And that's why, you know, I'm somewhat surprised the older I get and the more that we become knowledgeable of ourselves. And the more it seems like the more knowledge we have of ourselves, the more sometimes we fight ourselves, because although we have our own beauty and our own styles, because we are the style, we are the culture. We create the culture not only here in Texas, not only here in the United States, but across the world. Black culture makes the world go round. You can take it to music, through sports, through industry. Black culture makes the world go round. And it gets also into corporate America, to where they want to use our culture to make their millions of dollars, but they want to hide our culture and suffocate our cultures and put our culture in a noose and do it in our own minds too. We want to suffocate our own culture just to assimilate so we can walk through their door.
But sometimes I just want to wear weave, and I like it.
So then let me ask you this.
Like, that's just what it is.
I mean, I do want to add some hair just because I want to, too.
Right.
Hey, sure, you can do that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So you said you've been growing your dreadlocks for about 20 years. Have you experienced any racism in corporate America?
Absolutely.
So what type have, like, you
Due
experienced?
to your hair.
Yeah, not to your skin,
skin.
but due to your hair.
Can you decipher between the two?
You know
Oh,
what?
that's
That
a
is
good
great
question.
That's a great question. That's a great question because, you know, that's the thing about, and I don't know if I'm going in the wrong direction here, a different direction here. I'm 6'1", you know, I'm not light skinned, I'm medium brown, cocoa complected, as LL Cool J would say, but not about me. But, you know, just walking in the door, I have an athletic build. I know through history. And honestly, you don't have to say history. You can say the here and now, because you can turn on the news to where you see someone who looks like me. You just face discrimination just walking through the door. And I hate to say that because I could be putting something on someone who is just seeing a person. But being a black man in America, you know there's discrimination when you're just walking through the door, number one. Number two, being black and looking black in America is just not acceptable. It's often not acceptable in corporate America. And that's why I believe it's up to us to force the issue instead of waiting for America to adapt to us. We don't have to wait for them to adapt to us. First, we need to accept ourselves and just be ourselves. And hell, they can take it or leave it.
It sounds good, right? But there are these things that some people have. They're called jobs, and they need them to pay their bills. And as much as you may want to rock some blonde dreadlocks on one side and a shaved head on the other side, and that's maybe what you want to do, your job may not want you to do that. And how do you find the go-between? And then also, how do we find the happy balance? Because I do think that there are different hairstyles for different situations. Like, if I'm going on vacation and I want to rock neon purple hair, that's my business. But if I'm an attorney and I'm meeting a client, I don't know if my client wants me to have neon purple hair when I'm going to court. I don't know if that's...
Or I don't want to go in front of a judge with neon purple hair.
And I don't think I think neon purple hair doesn't matter what your skin tone is.
Correct. I
Yeah.
agree with that.
That's true. Well, it depends.
I don't
Depends on
know.
what you're doing here. It depends. It depends.
No, because let me be very honest. Is that I have seen people of different colors that can pull off different looks. You know, I've seen Caucasian colleagues of mine rock pink hair, and they do the pink tips, and
Or even do like a little string of purple right here. Or like green, like a little strand.
Yeah.
So, and then get away with that versus we do a little shade of dark blue or something and it's not going to be considered professional walking into a courthouse.
And sometimes I will say this is sometimes we are our worst critics. Like some stuff you go with your white colleagues and friends and they're like, oh, I love your hair. And then you go to your grandmama house, you be like, you looking like a jigaboo. What are you doing? Like with your natural hair.
That's true.
Well, then, again, you get into, it's very true, so your grandmother or someone older, because there are certain conservative beliefs of assimilation. You know, there are the belief that, you know what, let me perm my hair, let me look as Caucasian as possible so I can get this job and take care of my family. You know, several generations before us have made a great many sacrifices of themselves in order for us to have certain positions and to be in certain positions of power, which we are in now. And our number one power starts in our spending power. You know, although we're 12% of the population, we are the number one spenders here in this country.
Right.
And that's but money is power, period. And in that power, we have the opportunity to look ourselves. You know, we shouldn't have to assimilate or hide who we are in order to make money, because you know what? Our money is all the same color. Our money is, you call it blonde, black, wavy hair, straight hair, perm hair, curly hair, call it whatever you want to. It's green and it's acceptable in every color and every hairstyle and every hairdo. But that's where it comes in, and it gets into another area of, hell, if they don't accept us for who we are, hell, let's spend our money in our own community anyway.
So that's a good segue. Let's talk about DeAndre Arnold real quick. When you were saying how we do have the control, spending power, even though we don't always use it, he actually made a stand. Again, he was a young man that was in the news, that was in, was it Bellevue, Texas? Well, it's a suburb outside of Houston, Texas, where he was not allowed to walk for graduation because he was not going to cut his dreads. And we have an article about that. Can we put an article up?
Yeah, it was a New York Times article, and they ended up inviting him to the Oscars for the Hair Love.
Matthew A. Cherry.
Yes, Matthew A. Cherry. Mm-hmm.
And he was awarded a $20,000 scholarship from Ellen and Alicia Keys for his principles. So, I mean, that's good. He held to his beliefs.
I mean, but then also, I want to know about these school districts who have these kind of arbitrary rules. I mean, why do you care? He's leaving. Why do you care whether he wears dreads or not?
Do we know exactly what the policy stated? Because I'm
the-
thinking, is this a new rule?
I think that this particular rule, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was no dreadlocks, like specifically no dreadlocks.
Like since day one?
Oh, see, I thought it was probably hair length. So the school I went to, there was a certain amount of your hair can go past, I think it's your earlobe.
Oh, maybe
And
it was.
That wasn't. There was white boys who had to cut their hair.
And the reason for that is because of the purpose of like fights, because they were saying it was dangerous. So when kids were getting into fights, if your hair was to a certain length, they could be able to grab your hair, or it could be like dangerous.
Oh no, I was at a conservative school in Alabama. It had nothing to do with fights. It was for presentation and looks. You're not going to be walking around with long hair. It had nothing to do with fights. It was just, we're not doing this. And he left that school and went to a different school who did accept him, because they didn't even, they put up a fight, but then they didn't. It was like, okay, I'm going to graduate regardless of what y'all say. I'll go to a different district that will accept me and my hair. And I appreciated him because he wasn't just growing his locks just to be growing his
Right.
locks. He was growing it for a cultural thing and for his father, who's
Because he's
Jamaican.
or Bahamian or whatever.
I think it was Trinidad.
Oh, okay.
So I was
yeah.
Trinidad, and his father's practicing Rastafarian. And what I think the story behind it is, he took his locks and he wore them in certain styles. And what he had agreed to is he wear the styles up. He typically wears his hair up all the time, to where the length was never a problem because his hair was up in different styles. And one day he wore his hair down, and they met with the principal's administration several times trying to find someone to compromise, to where the parents said, okay, what we would do, we'll keep his hair up to where his length would basically be unknown.
Right.
But now they saw his hair, they said, well, no, he just needs to cut it. He needs to cut it. And they refused to show any compromise. Now, the conversation is he's getting into his religious principles, into his Rastafarian principles, which, if you look, especially in 2020, if he was Jewish and he wanted to put a yarmulke on his head, it wouldn't be an issue, because, of course, there's no hats in school. Today, because we're becoming more culturally aware. If it was a Muslim and it was a hijab, it wouldn't be a problem. But typically, you run into this issue when you're black and you look black. And I believe this young man is what this young man is running into.
What bothered me about this is that the dreads weren't even that long. Like, when I heard the story, I thought the dreads were like, have you seen men who have like dreads down to their butt? Like, okay, I still think it would be an arbitrary rule, but it's like, okay, dreads are too long, but maybe it interferes with like cap and gown issues or something. I don't know.
No,
But the dreads weren't even long. They were just regular dreads. Your dreads are longer than his dreads.
And mine are very long. I've had them longer.
Right. But then also, I'm curious to see, like, if a non-black student, because there are people who have dreadlocks who are non-black, if they would have enforced the same policy.
Well, I mean,
Or
you can look through the history of America and then probably answer that question. You can go to last year to the young man at the state wrestling tournament.
We actually have an article on that too.
a clip.
Yeah,
no.
a clip on that.
Yeah, who they cut his hair, unbelievably cut his hair there at the state tournament, which that's a whole other story. You know, that's assault.
Well,
assault, but
no,
just
because
like
he actually
he
consented
said,
to
he
the
said
He's a
he was
minor.
okay with it.
right.
He's a minor.
He can still consent.
That's right. He's a minor, under pressure. No, that should not even be an option. He shouldn't even be asked that
Whether
question.
it
And
was
number one.
duress,
Number two,
that's a different story.
Right.
Well,
That's an argument you can
it is-
have with that.
Well, number two, he was also in compliance.
Right.
So he was already in compliance, so you shouldn't have to have cut it in the first place.
Right.
By the rest and compliance of that state and that interscholastic league, he was in compliance.
Right. But what we were talking about, what you're talking about, is a crime versus a regulation in compliance. Two different things. Like, was he in compliance with the UIL rules? Yep, probably. And should they have been able to cut his dreads? No. But was it criminal? No. Because he consented to them cutting his dreads. It wasn't like they held him down and he was like, no, stop. And they cut his dreads.
Well, I guess when I hear that makes me think of the Central Park Five.
Not quite the same.
While you have minors with no representation who consented.
Well, he did have
And spent-
representation,
spent
though.
many years in prison. Where was the representation? They
His
spoke to
coach
him.
is his representation.
Is not his parent. Is not his legal guardian.
But that's a parent. So that's a parent issue because that's a discussion to me that should have been had with the child.
Right.
You have a son that has dreads. When you decided, you and your significant other decided that we're going to give our son dreads, I'm hoping that there was a discussion that was had about what does it mean for you to wear dreads, because there's going to be some backlash for him having dreads.
Well, unfortunately, my wife and I, we did have that conversation, and I do say unfortunately because unfortunately I have to have a conversation about my son's hair,
Yeah.
which I honestly, she's the one who pushed for that conversation. Personally, I feel like there's no conversation to be had. I don't need to have a conversation with anyone as it pertains to my son and how he chooses to wear his hair. That's a part of his culture. What's the conversation about?
Maybe his culture.
I don't think parents have a conversation with, oh, are you going to wear your blue eyes to school today, Johnny?
No. But why are you wearing dreads? Why was that young man that was a wrestler?
That's like, why are you wearing polo?
No.
No.
Because if he's wearing dreads because of his culture or because of a religious or something like that, then you're not so quick to cut your hair just to be able to get on the mat and have a match, because that means more than my hair is more about who I am and what I stand for versus me losing a match here today.
Because, like what you just said, your son is probably not going to cut his hair for a match. He is cutting his hair because you and your wife had the conversation about the importance of his hair and why it's in locks.
And I also want to go back, I guess, because my husband is a coach. I want to be clear is that when a coach is going to take a student to a meet, you are considered, at least in the state of Texas, the locus parentis, meaning you are the parent or the guardian for that child while that child is participating in that particular activity. Now, whether they called his parents and said, hey, can we cut his dreads? But it was really his coach's position to contact the parent to see whether that is something that they're okay with. But if the student consented to that, then I think that that's a different story. But going back to your conversation, yes, I do think that Jewish people have a conversation as to why it's important to wear the yarmulke, or Muslims talk about why it is important to wear their head covering and their hijab. I do think that that is very important, and I do think that they have those conversations because being in the school system, there are instances where people try to pull them off and do things like that or try to compromise their culture, and the same thing kind of occurs. Now, I don't think anyone's cutting or their hair, but it happens, and I do think that it's important to have a conversation for several reasons.
And I'm going to say this, it's not fair.
No.
Yeah,
across the
we
board,
all
I
agree.
personally don't think that it's fair that the Jewish parents would have to have their conversation, the Muslim parents, or even the black parents. I mean, even, I don't have kids yet, but if I do, God blesses me with a son, to have the conversations that I'm probably going to get to have just to say about how to act with police officers, what to do when you're driving. We did an episode on driving while black. All those things, it's unfair.
Think
but
about
I would
the
rather have the
transgendered
conversation.
parents. They have to have the conversation about what restroom their kids can use. Do you think that that's a fair statement, a fair conversation to have about what does it matter what restroom you go into? But they have to have those conversations.
Well, I guess in that, I mean, to address one of your first points, I taught school for 15 years, and I coached for probably all 15 years of those. And you do have relationships with parents, you do have relationships with students, and oftentimes you are acting guardian. Now, in that particular situation, no one approached the coach. That ref made an erroneous decision. That ref was also kicked out of that league and kicked out of being a referee
Right.
for that decision that he made. So I want to be very clear about
Yeah.
that as we get into the parents and the coaching. What he did was wrong, and he was punished for that.
That's right.
Although he was not properly punished for that, because I feel like just not being there to ref was not punishment enough. And you also have to get into the mind of, we're talking about kids here. This kid works hard, trains hard, not only academically but also athletically, because he has to be eligible in order to compete. And he put himself in something that he works hard for every day of his life, especially something like wrestling. I know most of us probably think about the WWF or something like that. But in wrestling, there's a lot of hard work that goes into being a Greco-Roman style wrestling, for as training and keeping your weight a certain weight. And for a young man, a teenage young man, that's just very hard to do.
Yeah.
And you put you're in a situation and you're on the spot. And, you know, we can get into these other overarching situations, but I think we get blindsided. That's like saying, to me, when we start getting into all those other avenues, that's like saying, well, all lives matter. Yes, all lives matter. Saying Black lives matter does not mean that white lives does not matter or Hispanic lives does not matter. You know, if I have, if I'm wearing a cancer pin, it doesn't mean that, no, we don't care about curing AIDS. No. And so when we go down that avenue, we weaken the argument and we delegitimize the plight that we have and things that we face, that my son faced, that my daughters will face, that your future children will face, and your children and future children will face when we do that. And we have to be very careful as Black people, as parents, to not ever punch ourselves in the mouth and give anybody else any chance or any opening or any opportunity to suffocate our plight and suffocate our argument. You know, as you brought up transgender, you know, Black America, we have freed everybody in the United States of America except ourselves. Everyone. Women's rights, gay rights. We fought that fight on the backs of our ancestors, on the backs of our great-great-great-great-great-grandparents, on the back of our grandparents. My grandmother's 95 years old, and she still talks to this day. She remembers poll taxes. She talks about poll taxes. My mother was born in 1950. And in 1950, my mom was born without the rights of a citizen to this country. To this day, we've only barely been citizens really here in this country for barely over 50 years.
Right. I'm not saying that what happened was wrong, but I think we are, this podcast, a legal podcast. We are attorneys. So when you said assault, I think all of us went off like, hold on, because we have to give accurate information. We have to use accurate definitions. And so if it is an assault, you can't have consent. And if you look at the video, it wasn't like anyone was forcing him. Now, whether he was under duress, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I go to Central Park 5. You know, if you look at the video, they gave consent. They told a story. Yeah, yes, I did it, although I wasn't there. Although I didn't have proper representation, there was a young man who had representation even from his parent, but yet still under duress, and his parent being under duress from being in the system.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I was going to say this. I think, and I get what you're saying about the duress versus the assault, but I think that the other part of this hair love argument is, how far do you fight the system before you? Is it wrong to assimilate? I mean, or
where would we be? Where would we be sitting in this room right now if those that came before us decided not to fight the system?
Well,
where would we be?
Let's look at it like
if
this,
they didn't
though.
take it all the way. Even going back, this is Black History Month. As simple as something that we look at, and some probably most of us wouldn't even do now, is not riding. I'm not going to ride the bus. I'm not going to sit on the back of the bus. Something that's probably we think now is arbitrary is riding the bus. Because most of us wouldn't even ride a bus now. We're going to call it Uber.
Right.
You know?
Or Lyft.
You know, and I always, that's something, although, you know, in recent years, and when you have kids, you start to think of things a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
As a person who rode the bus, as a person who, my grandmother, watching her ride a bus sometimes to go to work, you know, and I think about those things. You know, I think about those Black people who decided, you know what, I'm going to walk, you know, versus you making a mockery of me as a man or as a woman. I'm going to walk 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 miles to work and walk those same miles back home every day. I mean, I'm going to get up at 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning to walk to make this 20-minute, 10-minute, whatever drive, but I'm going to walk.
but they still went to work.
But they still went to work.
And
But
they
they
still
walked to work, but they
collected
made
it.
the sacrifice.
No, and they still collected a check.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where this argument comes into play is that a lot of times the hair argument is for your education, which then will get you the check. It's for your job, which is your livelihood. Most of them did not leave their jobs.
But
And most of them
some
can't lose their job either.
But some of them did lose their job. They were told if you were caught riding with other people, if you were caught carpooling, you would lose your job. If you were late, you would lose your job. If you participated in this boycott, you were threatened to lose your job. So and some people did lose their job. Many people lost their jobs. And many people lost their jobs during the civil rights movement. Many people went to jail during the civil rights movement. Many people lost their lives in the civil rights movement. Not only for a job, for something that's the right to vote. They lost their jobs.
So, do you think that this
lost their lives?
Do you think the
lost their livelihoods.
Do you think the natural hair movement equates to what they were fighting for?
Everything equates to what they were fighting for. They were fighting not only for their hair. They were fighting for
objection,
the right to vote,
non-responsive.
That wasn't
the question.
That wasn't the question, because they were fighting for the right to vote. They were fighting for citizenship.
They're fighting for civil rights. Your hair is a civil right.
So, if you had the opportunity, because if hair is a civil right, would you call for people to fight long enough where they lose their jobs?
Absolutely. But it gets in, for me, honestly, it gets into other avenues because it gets into the black dollar for me. Mm-hmm. Because as I stated earlier, I mean, why not spend our own money in our own community and we don't have to worry about that anymore?
Okay,
you know,
but
I mean, we fund this country. Not only do we build this country,
but that
we fund
doesn't
this
work
country.
for all avenues and professions.
it doesn't work for most avenues.
Because
for black people?
For attorneys, I'm tell you right now, for doctors, fine. You open your shop up in a black community, your client is black.
Yeah.
For an attorney, that case where if he was assaulted, I got to take him through the court system. I can't create my own courts.
Well, there's a system that goes into voting.
But then also, even if you're a black doctor, what if you want to work for a hospital and you, unfortunately, your parents aren't billionaires? You can't build your own hospital, so you have to work for another person's hospital.
Why is it a hospital? yeah. Hospital.
I just felt fancy.
So let me ask you this: as your attorney, correct?
Yes.
So I mean, natural hair. For as a natural hairstyle, braids, cornrows. Braids are considered a natural hairstyle.
Yes, it's a protective style.
It's a protective style. So
where did it come from? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Where's it come from?
No,
well,
I mean
to make black people feel like
because
a
I'm
new
like,
term,
really,
you know.
where did protective style come from?
But anyway,
I'm talking about
that's
the
a different
word.
story.
Yeah, because
I
I'm
think-
like,
I think
that's a
it's
new
I think
age.
it's a marketing.
Yeah, because
tool
I'm like,
used
really?
by hairstylists to
Right.
promote business.
Oh, okay.
person.
Because I'm like,
Correct.
I mean,
but
but I think it also
what was
helps,
your question?
I mean, I know you seem pretty conservative as it pertains to black hair or the styles or presentation, if I'm understanding correctly from hearing you.
I think that there's a line.
There's
I
a
do.
line?
Yes. I think
So
that
what is the difference between your hair and my hairstyle? Because they're actually very similar.
I didn't say that there was a difference, but
No, I didn't say. I'm just asking. I'm
no,
asking.
I don't think that there's a difference between your hairstyle and my hairstyle.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But the way in which I would wear my braids, maybe like for example, when I go to the office on the weekend, I take my braids up and I put them in a high bun, and it's a very big high bun.
Similar to DeAndre Arnold.
No.
Well,
I didn't see his bun. I didn't see his bun. I just saw his kind of like in a little headband. But I'm saying I wear it like at the top of my head, and I wear it like an
ice cream cone,
like a turban almost. Mm-hmm. And would I wear that to court? Probably not.
Well, that's similar because that makes me think of I think it's called. You're from Louisiana, or you went to LSU? Or you said you're from Alabama. I'm sorry.
I've lived everywhere. What do you want to talk about?
Well,
I'll rep the whole Gulf Coast for you.
Right.
All right, it makes me think of a tie-in. I think it was a law in 1753, 46, something like that. A tie-in. Black women were not allowed to show their hair. They're not allowed to show their hair, so they would wear hair wraps, which is from the I think West African, the Jillies maybe from West Africa. Excuse me. But part of that law, black women can wear their hair, but lo and behold, the head wraps became a thing of style, a thing also of empowerment.
Right. The Nation of Islam did not like for women to show their hair either.
Mm-hmm.
So how you wear your hair is your civil right,
Well,
right?
the Bible tells you.
So
hair's your
are
glory,
they
especially for
being
women.
oppressive
Mhm.
by making women cover their hair?
Well, there are other Muslim facets that also the men cover their hair.
I'm
They don't cut
asking
their hair.
in the Nation of Islam, because you talked about the civil rights movement. Women were to cover their heads. You said that how a person wears their hair is a civil right. So was the Nation of Islam being oppressive by making women in their sector cover their heads?
So in civil rights, does religion fall under civil rights? I know you're an attorney, so I have to ask that question.
It's a civil liberty.
It's a civil liberty.
Yes.
So in that community, as part of their religion, women cover their hair. So they are practicing their civil right by actually covering their hair, but they have that choice. That's a choice they make. They're not made to do that.
I think that's
I
a
think they are made to cover up their hair.
Well, they're choosing your religion, just like we have a right of religion, freedom of religion.
So
That's
they're
their-
choosing to be.
well. Then an employer could say the same thing. I'm asking you not to wear your dreadlocks,
And
and
this
you're
is a-
choosing to work here. Like,
Well-
Or choose to walk away.
yeah,
Right.
or choose to wear your dreadlocks and not work here. It's the
choose
same
not working.
concept.
No, it's not the same concept because that's her religious practice. No more than the Sikhs as the men. They don't cut their beards or they cover their hair. Just like I think Harris County just hired their first constable who's wearing wearing a head wrap. I know you mentioned earlier about going to Philadelphia and seeing so many women, so many people with locks. As did I when in the late '90s when I went to Philadelphia and saw all these people, women, professional women, lawyers, attorneys like you all, in locks, going to court, in and out of courtroom.
But I
You
think
know,
that
and,
depends on where you're working. If you have your own practice and you see so fit to have everybody in there with locks in their hair or wearing afros, that is your business. But if I'm going to go work for another employer and they tell me my hair needs to look X, Y, and Z, you fall in line. It's the same way with the tire. You're not going to come in there naked. You won't do that.
Can't
If they
wear
tell you
flip flops.
if they tell you
So-
to wear closed shoes, you'll do it.
So if we're still speaking about, with Muslims, so I guess, are you all saying, so it's okay if a Muslim woman would have to take her hijab off?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
No,
What
I'm
I
not
would
asking.
no.
You're saying, well, if the employer says, well, you can't wear that here, so you have
Then
to
that's
fall
not the
into-
job for her. There's when you go interview for a job, and I would hope that they would bring this up. But if that's a problem, I'm hoping that she's asked that question or they have said something and she can choose whether or not she's going to go to that job or not.
So you're basically saying private entities, people should not be able to practice their religion, and because this is your religion.
No.
No.
I'm saying
No.
that no, that's not what I'm saying. If I'm
That's what
owning
it sounds like you're saying.
I'm not. I'm saying that
I believe that's almost what you said.
No, what I'm saying is that we know that there's discrimination across the board, period, right? And some people are ignorant and they're going to be like, I don't want you having that on because I don't like Muslims. I don't like these groups of people. I'm hoping that if someone walks in and they are Muslim, I'm hoping that the employer goes ahead and says that up front and says, listen,
If you want this job, take it off.
I'm an ignorant
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
and I want you to take it off. That is not the job for her. That is not a fight that she needs to make there. Why put yourself through that kind of ignorance? For what?
I think it's
But more
twofold though,
why should I have
Taria,
to?
because
You
But
should
why
have-
would you want to be somewhere where they don't want you?
Well,
Or,
it-
like, go
but
ahead.
I mean, if you look at the history of
And black
America,
people should leave America then.
well, I'm saying if you look at the history, I get
That's way farther.
I
Go ahead.
understand both sides, because why would you want to work for someone that is discriminatory or a bigot? But then also, how are you going to change anything without
Perfect segue. Go ahead.
without doing such? But my question is there a limit?
Well, let's
Like, how far do we go?
perfect segue. 2, let's talk about the Crown Act.
Okay.
So we know that the Crown Act basically is. Let me get the breaking down. So the Crown Act was originally was the first law passed in California. California was the first state to pass the Crown Act, which is basically to ban discrimination. Basically, it was to ban African American men and women from being discriminated for their natural hair.
Right.
And it was passed on July 3rd, 2019. And we have an article. So we're going to actually give a brief history with our article video on the Crown Act before we go into a conversation. And then real quick, to the definition of crown, or what crown stands for, is creating a respectful and open world for natural hair. So that's what the crown, that's what it's the definition of crown, or what the CROWN means in crown.
Right. They tried it.
What, you don't like the
You don't like it?
breakdown?
Creating a
think it fits
respectful and open world for natural hair crown. My head is my crown. My hair is my crown.
I like it, but I feel like with the abbreviations, like you added words in between, right?
Creating C.
Play the clip.
Right.
Okay, you got A.
And so now we're not at crown no more. We're at craw. And see,
Play the clip. Roll the clip.
Y'all
Roll
know.
the tape.
Our own words.
y'all know I'm right. We try.
Over there,
They
next,
tried.
hairstyles. Governor Gavin Newsom signed the bill into law yesterday. It protects black people with styles like dreadlocks or cornrows. CBS This Morning Saturday co-host that's Michelle Miller is at Essence Festival in New Orleans, an annual expo celebrating black culture and music. Michelle, what's behind this new law?
Well, Gail, good morning. Well, the Essence Festival, this festival we're talking about, is all about empowering black women, not just in mind and spirit, but in how they wear their hair, their crown. Let's face it, hair matters to everybody. But the authors of this new law say that women with kinky and curly hair are often discriminated against, viewed as inferior even. Dove recently sponsored a survey that showed that black women were 80% more likely to change their natural hair to conform to social norms and expectations on the job. So there are a lot of folks who think this new law is long overdue.
It had nothing to do with the job. I knew the job, or you wouldn't have hired me. It just had everything to do with my hair.
Chastity Jones was tangled in a nearly 10-year legal battle after she says an employer took back a job offer at an Alabama call center because she refused to cut her hair.
She said, "Are those dreadlocks in your hair?" And I just looked at her and I was like, "These?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Yes, they are." She said, "Well, we can accept that here."
In 2013, Jones sued the company for discrimination and lost wages, but her claim was dismissed. Last year, the NAACP filed a petition to bring her case to the Supreme Court. It declined to hear the case.
She just didn't make me feel like I was wanted there, period.
She's not alone.
What's wrong with her hair?
In August of 2018, Louisiana sixth grader Faith Finity was kicked off school grounds because her braided hair violated school policy. And a few months later, a wrestling official told New Jersey high school athlete Andrew Johnson he would have to cut his dreadlocks in order to compete.
To make sure our beauty is welcome.
Doug
So now we kind of got a history of the Crown Act. We've got different examples of the Crown Act. And Sam, you feel like something burning in your soul.
I
to
have
talk
nothing,
about.
but I wonder, was it because dreadlocks were blonde?
Yes.
Maybe if that played a part as well. Not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm saying maybe it added to the discriminatory act.
I want to know if her hair was like that when she first got started. I mean, good, like she been growing it for a while. So, like, when she had the interview, she had them in her hair. So maybe it's because it was blonde. Or maybe she dyed it later. I don't know.
Well, I guess, I mean, that we don't know what color her hair was at the time. 10 years passing, it was obviously going to be shorter than it was then. But funny part about that, I get it when you get into the different colors and different things. I know earlier.
Which isn't her
I think
natural hair color.
Sam brought up purple hair and pink tips and those things. But it's funny, you know, to me, you're getting the white privilege because there are plenty of people of European descent that put a little peroxide in their hair and go to work and decide to change their hair color, and that's not a problem, not an issue. So, I mean, whether it's blonde or not, but the issue that she did present to her were those dreads, were those locks in your hair. Also, she didn't tell her that the color of your hair, she told her it's your locks.
Well, and and I will say this. As an attorney, I know that there's always three sides to the story. There's the plaintiff sides, the defendant sides, and then there's the truth. And for this case to not even make it all the way through, there's some extra stuff in there that we don't know. So that is her perspective that she's pulling up, and she might think she's a good employee, but maybe her dreads were distracting from her customer service skills.
Well, so when she's sitting in a room talking on the phone, somehow that was distracting the person who cannot see her from her doing her job and doing her job well. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying we don't know.
Or maybe it was distracting the person sitting
Or maybe
next to her. Maybe it was distracting the white person sitting behind her who maybe wanted to touch her hair like she was Venus or something.
But-
Sarah Bartman.
Or it could
like,
be
you know,
that
the human
the
zoo,
headset
at
that she was
at the
wearing.
human zoo, and want to touch you.
I mean, or it could be her headset. We don't know. We do not know.
I think what she's saying is that when you file a petition with the Supreme Court, right, tons of petitions get denied for various reasons. So maybe the Supreme Court felt that there was something else on other than discrimination that occurred.
Well, that's the whole purpose. Yes, her case was denied by the Supreme Court, so it didn't get picked up. But this is the purpose of the Crown Act.
Right.
And three
Right.
states already, somebody feel like there's a problem. Some states are actually seeing that there is a problem. California passed it. Colorado has passed it.
All the states that are legal to
Well,
smoke weed.
Texas is actually in the process of trying to pass it. It is in the educational stage right now, but in 2021 it's supposed to be on our House and Senate floor. So Texas is trying to pass one as two.
I have a question.
So
Your vote matters.
I have a question. Because I think the Crown Act is a great act. So let me go ahead and say that so people don't think that I have any issues with the locks.
Right.
I don't care.
Now
It's-
say your
do what you do.
Now say your issue.
However,
comma.
I believe that they should be kept and be neat and be clean. So just because,
But what does that mean?
have you ever seen disarray hair like that? It's just not together. It's not.
No, I agree with you. But what some people may view as neat,
And
other people
clean.
may view as not as neat.
Because I can still see there's loopholes in this Crown Act if you really think about it, right? So yes, we have to let you come in because you have dreads and stuff, but I want you to keep your hair neat.
Or I don't want you to add color to it because it's a color factor in the Crown Act.
Right.
Because
But-
we are talking about natural hair.
Well,
but
I
where
have
does it
friends that go and get their hair done every 2 weeks. He's a faithful member. Every 2 weeks has a stay-in appointment every Tuesday night because he's like, I want it to always look fresh.
Let me
and
tell
not
you
grow out.
something. When I was single, if you did not get your hair cut once a week, okay, a standing haircut, like black men, if you are gonna rock a fade, you need to keep it clean. Like walking around with your hair,
That should be your rest showcase.
baby, let me tell you,
So-
I don't, either you have a fade or you don't. But if you're gonna have a fade, back to what your sentiment was, it needs to be clean. You need to get the edge up or the line up or whatever you need to do to look like you don't live in your car.
So we basically are all up. Well, we have some consensus on is natural hair appropriate in all settings? Not even in all settings. We have a consensus natural hair is appropriate in certain settings. We all are for natural hair. Well, let me say this. We are all for discrimination is not right against natural hair.
No.
I think that's where we are across the board. We all have our own opinions on what we think is neat, what we think is appropriate in the workplace or in corporate America, or for your religion. We all have different opinions on that aspect. We are kind of coming to the end of the show. And so what we do at the end of the show is called rest your case. It can be something, basically what you want, like what you want down, like to end and you don't want to hear it again. Like you just like, some people say, I don't want to hear the word Liddy anymore. Let's let that go. So whatever you want to let go. It can be in reference to what we talked about today, or it can be in reference just in life in general. My case for today is I want to end the debate on whose hair is better, natural versus kinky, natural versus relaxed, and kinky versus good hair. Let's just end the debate. We all got hair. We all got black hair, whatever. We got hair. Wear your hair like you want to. Hey, do you? I don't care. Don't come for me, natural hair community, if I decide I want to relax my hair tomorrow and wear my pixie cut. That's what I want to do.
That community is so aggressive.
Sam, do you have a rest my case?
I
Perms lead to
do.
cancer.
What?
Perms lead to cancer.
Yeah, and you know what else leads to cancer? Cancer, and food, and water, and everything else.
Air.
I'm
And
just telling the
preservatives.
numbers. Just telling the numbers.
Okay. So, I would like to. I want to go last, only because I lost my train of thought.
I'll go.
Because he
I'll
said
go.
perms cause cancer.
I'm so glad you said that because you're right. You're right. Coming down my street. Get out of my pocketbook. Get out of my purse. Get out of my bank account. Get out of my house. If I want to put creamy crack on my hair and all my hair comes out, my business. Okay? If I want to straighten my hair because I want to conform and assimilate, my business. Stop telling me what to do with our money. And as black people, we always want to say, don't do this, don't do this. Everybody's coming for us, but we come for our own people so often. And if we just came around and said, listen, your hair is gorgeous, your hair is gorgeous, your locks are fly, they're neat, I appreciate that, and mind our own, we'd be in a better place.
Oh, I got
Especially men telling me what to do with my hair.
Oh,
Deal with your own hair.
Say it was your chest.
Golly.
Say it was
Once a week.
I didn't say that. That was my friend across the way.
I used to go once a week when I had a relaxer, and when I get it back, I would go once a week. I'm sorry, go ahead, Sam.
no, I am with you, Taria, but I also want to be on the other side of that. We as a people need to start telling people when it's time to let it go. Like when the dreadlocks aren't looking great, or maybe you're bald and your dreads used to be here and now they're here. It's time to let it go.
Don't
worry, your head bald.
It's time to rock a new natural
Why
look.
are you talking about Stevie Wonder?
I didn't say
Somebody,
it.
he need friends.
I didn't say the name.
He don't know what his head look like.
I
Stevie
didn't say
Wonder
the
need
name,
friends.
but seriously, we also, as a culture, need to come together and let certain people know, Al Sharpton, you need a new look.
He is repping for James Brown. You did not hear it before the story on why.
Technically, he does have a new look.
It's sleek, but I would love to see Al Sharpton in 2020 rock a fade. I'm a fan of a fade, guys. I can't
I'm
help
a fan
it.
of bald head.
I'm a
Let
fan of a
her
fade.
guess.
That's
What
the
is
country girl in
what's your rest showcase? Do you have a rest showcase?
Absolutely.
Of course he does.
Right.
How many do I get?
One.
Listen, I'm gonna cut you off.
One.
I'm gonna cut you off.
Get your own
Oh,
podcast.
well, on the way here, I did ask my son. My son has locks as well, and I asked him about his hair, and I asked him how you feel about his hair. He said, "I love my hair." I said, "Why do you love my hair?" "Oh, it makes me feel good." "Why does it make me feel good?" Because he said, "It looks like those who inspire me." I said, "Who inspires you?" He said, "My father."
Oh, okay. That's your rest showcase?
Well, I'm gonna rest my case. Early voting begins tomorrow, February 18th.
Yeah.
Voting is March 3rd, but early voting again starts on February 13th. If you don't vote, don't complain.
February 18th.
February 18th. Tomorrow, Tuesday, February 18th. Early voting. If you don't vote, don't complain.
Also, if you don't have that
Derek
little,
Reed, District 22 for Congress.
if you don't have that little circle with the star on your driver's license, you need to go do that before October, or you won't be able to vote in the presidential election in November. So make sure if you don't have the circle and the star that you get that worked out.
Hey, also, you can no longer vote straight ticket.
Yes.
Yes,
mentioned
Which
that
is
several
great.
times.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah, we mentioned
Yeah,
that
good
Go
several
education.
times.
research.
Yeah, research
before you
Derek
go
Reed for
inside.
Congress, District 22.
Is he even good? Okay, let's go ahead and.
Does he have natural hair?
He does have
He
natural
has.
hair.
He does?
Yeah.
Yes.
He
Very
got
natural.
dreadlocks?
No, it's curly. He looks.
Okay,
Dominican.
guys. Thank you. Thank
He's a
you.
mulatto.
You can follow us on. You can follow me on brand_Janae on Instagram. Taria,
Simply being T on Instagram.
Sam.
To the hair salon to get a retouch on these braids, or maybe a sew-in.
Can they follow you anywhere on any social media platforms? And
Yes, Patriot Title East. We can take care of all your title needs.
excuse me,
commercial,
they're not
real
a
estate.
sponsor. Till they
Right.
become a sponsor, you know. Well, thank you again for being a guest on our show. We do appreciate it. Thank you for this debate. You can follow us on Twitter at NFQ Pod. You can follow us on Instagram at No Further Q, and you can follow us on No Further Questions. Everybody, we have had a great show. Until next time, we're out.
Peace out.